in Taiwan and in Taipei specifically. So why do art fairs matter? Why are we here? Why are the galleries here? But also, why is there such a diverse and interesting audience attending these events? They only last a few days, a week maximum. I think for a gallery, it's quite an undertaking to do this. If you think about the cost, sure, a lot of galleries are local, but they still have to put their stuff up here. They have to pay to rent a booth, I assume. They have to get in. They have to take out insurance. And if you're from out of town, you have to get hotel costs, transportation costs. It's quite an investment. But still, galleries are very eager to do so. In fact, it seems almost like mandatory that you participate in at least 1 or 2 fairs a year. Now, why is that? Well, first of all, I think we have established that there's now a network worldwide of fairs, and that it's a big draw for all the people involved in the art world. So there's a proliferation. It has become sort of a global institution, if you will. So that in itself creates a network. It's established as a big venue where art stakeholders meet and where you can do business. As such, in the literature, it's often described also as sort of an engine and barometer of globalization. Now, I'm not particularly like the term globalization. For one, it's a bit too Eurocentric. It actually instills a discourse which I don't think is useful. The term emerging art markets also comes from that. That's why I prefer to talk about new markets. And the globalization of the art world implies that everywhere will be the same thing. That, and in economic terms, we even talk about the law of one price. If we would have a completely integrated global art market, the price of a particular artwork would be the same everywhere, whether you sell it here, in New York, London, Paris, or Moscow. We all know that that is not the case. So for the integration of the global art market network is not really there yet. The other thing is that there is a big debate going on about art market scholars, wondering to what extent globalization really is achieved. Because in many art fairs in the world, not this one, yes, you have global venues, but the presence of artists from outside of Europe and the United States is still quite low. So, it's best to work and live in New York, London, Paris, Berlin, if you want to get into an art fair. But that's a whole separate debate, if you will. And that's clearly not what we're seeing here. But still, they are referred to as drivers of a more integrated art market worldwide. Now, a lot of you will probably notice that, or agree with me, that art fairs actually have a positive effect on the image of a city. Cities often sponsor these events because they bring in tourism. They enhance the city's reputation. It's really a boost for them. Even the city where I work, Rotterdam in Holland, it's a huge port, a harbor, some of you may know. It's not the most important cultural center of the Netherlands, that would be Amsterdam. But still, since they've had an art fair, about 7-8 years ago they started, we see a lot more tourists coming just for that event. And of course they go out to dinner, they walk around, so they get to know Rotterdam and they contribute to the local economy. Here is one that I find quite interesting myself. In this global and digital age, where we can do so much from our screens, right? What we're seeing is masses of people, many people visiting art fairs. And so there is such a great need for face-to-face meeting. Or people want to belong to this event or experience it in life. Now, if you want, themselves. Now, the face-to-face meetings is important for the art market itself because the art world, as we all, many of you would agree with me, really depends on trust and networks. Trust still seems to be best conveyed or established in these face-to-face meetings in the art world. You need to be able to trust the person you are dealing with, the dealer, the auction house, whatnot. That seems to be very significant. still today. The other thing is that if I want to buy a work of art, but I'm old and old-fashioned, I actually want to see it. You're usually not allowed to touch it, but you want to get a sense of the tactility. You want to stand in front of it, see how it impacts you. It's not something that a lot of us would prefer to buy from a screen, from Instagram or something. Yes, it happens a lot and increasingly so, but the online market worldwide only represents 8% of total sales. Now it's growing, it's true, but growing somewhat. But 8% is not overwhelming, I would say. So these face-to-face meetings at an event like this are very, very important. Those of you, who are involved in the art world and market know that this event, those 4 or 5 days that everybody's here, is very important for networking. You get to see your peers, your colleagues. You try to establish relationships. I remember doing my study at the India Art Fair in Delhi. By the way, I refer to India every once in a while because that's where my case study lies. That's the new market that I've been studying for some time. And I did indeed a more in-depth study of the India Art Fair in 2012 and 2014. And when I interviewed all the gallery owners, and I would sometimes ask, okay, why are you here? Standard question. Is it mostly because of the sales? And some galleries would say, no, actually the sales are not that good this year, but I've gotten in touch with local museums, with artist cooperatives, and I'm sure something will come out of this long after the fair is done. So this networking capacity that these temporal events have, I think cannot be underestimated. Also because all the stakeholders are here. I am quite sure, even though I don't know the names, that a lot of the art critics from Taipei, a lot of the gallery owners, many of the collectors, museum curators would come and pay a visit. And you get to know each other, you talk, you talk about the latest trends and so forth. So on a very human level also, this is important. From an economic point of view, and I am in the cultural economics department in Rotterdam, so I look at these things also from an economic lens. This is for both the buyers and the sellers, for both the gallery owners and potential buyers. This is very handy. It's very efficient. If I'm a visitor to this city. If I have to find all the galleries or a lot of the galleries in Taipei, it would take me a lot of time. I don't know the way necessarily. I have to ask a lot. And sure, I am convinced that many of them will be in the same neighborhood. In fact, I know they are. But it's still a bit more of an effort. Here, I can just walk around. I walk 2 meters. I have a different gallery. Another 5 meters, another different one. It's very convenient. It's very accessible. And that sort of what economists refer to as search cost. It makes it, very efficient to go about my way and to see a lot of things. The same thing is of course, for the galleries, because they see their collectors base. They see their pool of art lovers just mingling around here, walking around here. Again, referring to the work I've done in India, I went to the fair several times, and then I also visited several of the galleries that were present there, and I looked at their guest book. And you could tell that they had many more visitors, people visiting the gallery booth at the fair, rather than people coming to the gallery itself. A lot of them were not even in Delhi. They were in Bangalore or Calcutta, and people just don't travel that much. So very efficient, also just geographically or just temporally, people being in the same place reduces search and transaction costs. The cost of doing business is much lower this way. I think it's a given that if you are present at a gallery, be it as at a fair, be it as a gallery or an artist, it really heightens your exposure. It can really enhance your reputation, particularly if you get into the right kind of art fairs. There is a hierarchy of fairs, as you all know, and this one ranks very high. It is important for a gallery to get that sort of quality approval or quality stamp by being admitted into a fair like this. And of course, it thereby gives them a great deal of exposure. you can showcase your artists. You can show them to a large audience. And I think that's one of the reasons why galleries do feel compelled to go to several fairs a year and make sure they get that kind of exposure and airtime, if you will. And that, you know, along the lines with that, it really signals quality and acceptance. We know that because art fairs do not just allow any gallery to come. Often they are quite selective. There's a vetting committee. They look at the kind of artists you want to bring in. So when you, as a gallery, you do get into the right art fair for you, and that could be a regional one or a very international one or a local one. That all depends on your profile, and you need to think about that very carefully. That is, you know, a way forward that really helps galleries establish their reputation and also to really generate sales. And one of the things, and I alluded to this before, one of the things I find quite fascinating also, and even yesterday I walked around and observed a bit, some booths, some galleries will attract a lot of attention, others less. Some artists will attract a lot of attention. Sometimes there's people gathering around a certain piece like, whoa, what is this? And one of the things that I even took away from my historical studies is that this venue, this setting, indeed allows for a kind of experimentation or testing the waters, you can say. And what do I mean by that? Well, putting up your art here, you can see like, okay, what is moving here? What's hot? What do people like? Where are tastes going to? Where is the demand for certain art? Is it there or not? And that's a very interesting process to observe. That's a very, I think also important aspect of how the art world functions. And while all the galleries, in some ways, are each other's competitor, they're in this together. And they share, it's a way of sharing information. If you notice that a particularly new style, a new medium, a new type of painting or sculpture or video art is catching on, even if it's not your own gallery, you notice it. You can probably anticipate for the next time. You can engage maybe with different kind of artists, or artists can learn from each other. They just have to walk around, even when they just go get a cup of coffee. They see what else is on show. And I think that that process, that exchange of information, is a very important component on how artistic production is steered and also influenced. So I think these venues where, with all the face-to-face contact, where we are confronted with the art, but also with the other stakeholders, really contributes to the making of a market and the development of an art scene. I'm not sure if that makes a whole lot of sense to you, but I think this is definitely also historically taking place as far as I know. What we've seen in the last decade is that pretty much every year, not so fast anymore this time, but pretty much every year, the part of the annual revenues, these are global figures, for galleries where they make their money, the number of transactions, is increasing every year vis-a-vis the participation in art fairs. So art fairs have become important vehicles for sales. It didn't used to be that way. It was much lower. Like I said, it was much more of a networking event. And now, since galleries are also participating in more fairs a year, not just one or two, often 3 or 4, we see that the percentage of the annual revenues really is going up. I have no idea what it would be for the galleries in this particular fair. I assume it varies quite a bit, but still. So this is what this art economist called Claire McAndrew came up with in 2015, that we're now at sort of 40%, which I think is quite significant. So it does have a marketing component. It is important for the actual selling of art, in addition to all the things that are listed above. Let's see what else. I was, what you read about the origins of the modern art fairs, starting in Cologne and Denver, and moving forward, is that actually it was a response at the time against the hegemony, against the increasing power, market share, I should say, of auction houses. I know in the Cologne area, in the Ruhr area, basically, art galleries were having a very hard time to compete with the auction houses, to even get people to come. So that's why they got together and created this event. So for the galleries, this is also an important tool, an important way of making themselves very visible, making themselves known, and very prominent in the art world and market. And I assume this is also the case a bit here. Obviously, you sometimes have mixed events where auction houses are involved with art fairs, but it's still not, as far as I can tell, it's still not the norm. And I think, you know, maybe to conclude that way, I find it just great fun. It is just an unmissable event, I think, for a lot of people interested in art, whether you are a collector, whether you are just an art lover. I mean, it's no coincidence that most art fairs will have a lot of events. They have parties. There was the vernissage last night. Then there's sort of even separate gallery showings. You get, you know, the VIP event beforehand. You have all kinds of things going on, often at various places in the city. And, you know, it makes it a bit of a spectacle too. But in the end, it is just, you know, it is just fun and exciting. And art economists are even arguing, cultural economists, that art fairs therefore have become sort of part of the leisure industry, that people travel for it. It draws large crowds, and it becomes sort of part of a city trip. But in the end, you know, I will say it's just exciting, and it is great fun, and I would say, you know, that is actually why we all are here. And I will leave it at that and hope for a question. Thank you very much. Che.